Welcome back to the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic presidential debate. I'm Judy Woodruff, joined by my PBS NewsHour colleagues Amna Nawaz and Yamiche Alcindor, by Tim Alberta of Politico. Now, let's turn to the next question from Tim.
Thank you, Judy. Candidates, let's make things interesting. Former President Obama said this week, when asked who should be running countries, that if women were in charge, you'd see a significant improvement on just about everything. He also said, quote, if you look at the world and look at the problems, it's usually old people, usually old men, not getting out of the way. Senator Sanders, you are the oldest candidate on stage this evening.
And I'm white as well. Yes.
How do you respond to what the former president had to say?
I got a lot of respect for Barack Obama. I think I disagree with him on this one. Maybe a little self-serving, but I do disagree. Here is the issue. The issue is where power resides in America. And it's not white or black or male or female. We are living in a nation increasingly becoming an oligarchy, where you have a handful of billionaires who spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying elections and politicians. You have more income and wealth inequality today than at any time since the 1920s. We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care for all people, which is why we need Medicare for all. We are facing an existential crisis of climate change. The issue is not old or young, male or female. The issue is working people standing up, taking on the billionaire class, and creating a government and economy that works for all, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, I'm going to guess that President Obama did not clear that remark through your campaign ahead of time.
And
what do you say to him?
And I'm going to guess he wasn't talking about me either.
Okay.
Number one. Look, I'm running because I've been around. On my experience. With experience, hopefully comes judgment and a little bit of wisdom. The fact is that we're in a position now, the next president of the United States is going to inherit two things. Economy that is out of kilter, and a domestic policy that needs to be, we have to unite America, and a foreign policy that requires somebody to be able on day one, stand up, look out, the entire world know who that person is, know what they stand for, and know they know them. And that's the reason I'm running. I have more experience in doing that than anybody on this stage.
Just to follow up, Vice President Biden, if elected, you would turn 82 at the end of your first term. You'd be the oldest president in American history.
Are you willing? Churchill.
Are you willing to commit American history?
American history.
Yes. Are you?
I was joking. That was a joke.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Politico doesn't have much of a sense of humor.
Oh, we've got a great sense of humor. They wouldn't have put me on stage otherwise. Are you willing to commit tonight to running for a second term if you're elected next November?
No, I'm not willing to commit one way or another. Here's the deal. I'm not even elected one term yet, and let's see where we are. Let's see what happens. But it's a nice thought.
Senator Klobuchar, you had your hand raised.
Thank you for asking a woman this question. I think, first of all, we have not had enough women in our government. When I was on Trevor Noah's show once, I explained how in the history of the Senate there was something like 2,000 men and only 50 women in the whole history. And he said if a nightclub had numbers that bad, they would shut it down. However, it is not just about numbers. It's about what you get done. And that is my argument. If you look at the poll at the state that knows me best, and that is the state of Minnesota, it showed in the state that Hillary had her lowest margin of victory, it showed that I beat Donald Trump by 18 points. I beat him with men more than anyone on this stage. So I think what matters in this election is, can you bring in those rural and suburban areas, particularly in the Midwest? And number two, what will you do when you get there? And I am someone that has passed over 100 bills with men and women, with Republicans and with Democrats, including changing the sexual harassment laws for the United States Congress, a bill I led, so taxpayers are no longer going to have to pay for people that harass other people.
Senator
I have
Warren.
passed the law for drug shortages. I have done work in our rural areas. I think that's what most matters to people. I would be so proud to be the first woman president, but mostly I want to be a president that gets things done and improves people's lives.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Warren, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated. I'd like you to weigh in as well.
I'd also be the youngest woman ever inaugurated. I believe that President Obama was talking about who has power in America, whose voices get heard. I believe he's talking about women and people of color and trans people and people whose voices just so often get shoved out. And for me, the best way to understand that is look at how people are running their campaigns in 2020. You know, I made the decision when I decided to run not to do business as usual. And now I'm crowding in on 100,000 selfies. That's 100,000 hugs and handshakes and stories. Stories from people who are struggling with student loan debt, stories from people who can't pay their medical bills, stories from people who can't find childcare. Now, most of the people on this stage run a traditional campaign, and that means going back and forth from coast to coast to rich people and people who can put up $5,000 or more in order to have a picture taken, in order to have a conversation, and in order maybe to be considered to be an ambassador.
Thank you, Senator
Those
Warren.
selfies, no, I want to finish this. Those selfies cost nobody anything. And I get it. In a democracy, we all have a lot of different points of view, and everybody gets one vote. But here's the thing. People who can put down $5,000 to have a picture taken don't have the same priorities as people who are struggling with student loan debt or are struggling to pay off medical debt. I'm running a campaign where people whose voices get heard. We can't have,
Thank you, Senator Warren.
We can't have people who can put down $5,000 for a check, drown out the voices of everyone else.
Thank you, Senator
They
Warren.
don't in my campaign, and they
Mayor
won't
Buttigieg.
in my White House.
Mayor Buttigieg, you had your hand raised.
Can't help but feel that might have been directed at me. And here's the thing. We're in the fight of our lives right now. Donald Trump and his allies have made it abundantly clear that they will stop at nothing, not even foreign interference, to hold on to power. They have already put together more than $300 million. This is our chance. This is our only chance to defeat Donald Trump. And we shouldn't try to do it with one hand tied behind our back. The way we're going to win is to bring everybody to our side in this fight. If that means that you're a grad student digging deep to go online to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in $10, that's great. And if you can drop $1,000 without blinking, that's great too. We need everybody's help in this fight. I'm not going to turn away anyone who wants to help us defeat Donald Trump. We need Democrats who've been with us all along, yes, but we also need independents worried about the direction of the country. If you were a Republican, disgusted with what's going on in your own party, we're not going to agree on everything, but we need you in this fight, and I will welcome you to our side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Warren, 45 seconds to respond.
So the mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine. Think about who comes to that. He had promised that every fundraiser he would do would be open door, but this one was closed door. We made the decision many years ago that rich people in smoke-filled rooms would not pick the next president of the United States. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
Mr. Mayor, your response.
You know, according to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire. So if this is important, this is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass. If I pledge never to be in the company of a progressive Democratic donor, I couldn't be up here. Senator, your net worth is 100 times mine. Now, supposing that you went home feeling the holiday spirit, I know this isn't likely, but stay with me, and decided to go on to PeteForAmerica.com and give the maximum allowable by law, $2,800. Would that pollute my campaign because it came from a wealthy person? No, I would be glad to have that support. We need the support from everybody who is committed to helping us defeat Donald Trump.
We would like to bring in everyone, but obviously, Senator Warren, I'd like to give you a chance to respond.
I do not sell access to my time. I don't do call time with millionaires and billionaires.
Sorry, as of when, Senator?
I don't meet behind closed doors with big dollar donors. And look, I've taken one that ought to be an easy step for everyone here. I've said to anyone who wants to donate to me, if you want to donate to me, that's fine. But don't come around later expecting to be named ambassador, because that's what goes on in these high dollar fundraisers. I said no, and I asked everybody on this stage to join me. This ought to be an easy step. And here's the problem. If you can't stand up and take the steps that are relatively easy, can't stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when it's relatively easy when you're a candidate, then how can the American people believe you're going to stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when you're president and it's really hard?
Judy.
Senator, I've got to respond.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to give you one more chance to respond.
If you can't say no to a donor, then you have no business running for office in the first place. But also, Senator, your presidential campaign right now, as we speak, is funded in part by money you transferred, having raised it at those exact same big-ticket fundraisers you now denounce. Did it corrupt you, Senator? Of course not. So to denounce the same kind of fundraising guidelines that President Obama went by, that Speaker Pelosi goes by, that you yourself went by until not long ago in order to build the Democratic Party and build a campaign ready for the fight of our lives, these purity tests shrink the stakes of the most important election.
Judy.
We'd like to bring everyone in. We'd like to bring everyone in. We'd like to bring everyone in, but Senator Klobuchar had your hand up first.
I did not come here to listen to this argument. I came here to make a case for progress, and I have never even been to a wine cave. I've been to the Wind Cave in South Dakota, which I suggest you go to. So what is making a case for progress about? That is what unites us up here instead of what divides us, which is campaign finance reform. That means passing a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. It means making the first bill we pass when I am president will be H.R. 1, which is the ethics reform passed in the House, which is currently sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk along with 400 bills. And if you don't think we can get this done, well, we can, but only if we win this election big. Not by arguing with each other, but by finding what unites us and getting this done. I came to make a case for progress.
Well, thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Sanders.
I am rather proud, maybe, I don't know, the only candidate up here doesn't have any billionaire contributions. But you know what I do have? We have received more contributions from more individuals than any candidate in the history of the United States of America at this point in an election, averaging $18 apiece. Now, there's a real competition going on up here. My good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, he's received contributions from 44 billionaires. Pete, on the other hand, is trailing Pete You only got 39 billionaires contributing. So, Pete, we look forward to you. I know you're an energetic guy and a competitive guy to see if you can take on Joe on that issue. But what is not a laughing matter, my friends, this is why 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half. This is why Amazon and other major corporations pay 0 in federal taxes. We need to get money out of politics. We should run our campaigns on that basis.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, 45 seconds to respond.
My average contribution is $43, number one. That's number one. Number two, the idea that the senator is suggesting that I am in the pocket of billionaires, when in fact they impose everything that I have ever done and continue to do. I have made sure from the very beginning, every one of my fundraisers is open to the press. Every single solitary one, not one single time, period. And I've made sure that you know exactly where all the largest contribution I've accepted is $2,800, which is allowed under law. And I'm the first person to introduce the constitutional amendment to make sure that there is all public funding of elections and all private funding. And we all should take a commitment, make a commitment to that right now on this stage. In the meantime, you got to fund a campaign. And we, in fact, have funded a campaign, average contribution, $43.
Thank you, Vice President.
Let me just
Mr. Steyer, I would like to bring you in.
Can I? Listen, I'm running because this government is broken because it's purchased by corporations. And I've spent 10 years fighting those corporations and beating them and building grassroots organizations to push power down to the people. That's what I've been doing for a decade. But let me say this. There's someone who's loving this conversation, and his name is Donald Trump.
That's right.
We know how he's going to run. He's told us last week, he looked at a group of Americans and said, I don't like you, you don't like me, it doesn't matter, you're going to support me because the Democrats will destroy the economy in 15 minutes. We need to go after this guy. He's a different breed of cat, and we need to beat him. And we need to talk about prosperity. And I spent 25 years building a business. We're going to have to take him on the economy, not have these kinds of conversations and tear each other down, but actually go after this corrupt president and beat him on the economy where he thinks he's king and where, in fact, he's a fraud and a failure.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. We're going to end it there. Amna?
Thanks, Tim. I want to turn now to an issue that's been in the headlines quite a bit, and that is immigration. Mr. Yang, we have a question here from a professor right here at Loyola Marymount. There are nearly 200,000 DACA recipients, so-called dreamers, in the state of California, more than any other state, including several students right here at LMU. If you win and you reinstate DACA through executive action, another president could just overturn it again. So will you move on a permanent legislative fix for dreamers in your first 100 days of elected?
Of course I would. I'm the son of immigrants myself, and I know that dreamers are essentially Americans in everything but this legal classification. I just want to return to this conversation because I think it's core. Our country is deeply misogynist, and most all of us know that. Money and men are tied together. That's where I thought Elizabeth was taking the conversation. The fact is, strong societies would elect more female leaders. Strong men treat women well for the same reasons. I'm on the record saying that you need both strong men and female leaders in government because the fact is, if you get too many men alone and leave us alone for a while, we kind of become morons. So it's related to our campaign finance rules because right now the fact is we operate in a fundamentally anti-woman marketplace. And that includes the marketplace for politicians. If we were to put 100 democracy dollars into the hands of every American voter, instead of 5% contributing, you'd see that rate skyrocket to 50 or 60%, and you'd have many, many more women who would run for office because they don't have to go shake the money tree in the wine cave.
Thank you, Mr.
Could I address?
I'd like to follow up. The question again, Mr. Yang, was about dreamers. You pledged to move on a permanent legislative fix in your first 100 days. Dreamers say that they are frustrated by Democrats' failure to prioritize their status in deal after deal. So why should dreamers trust Democrats now?
I believe everyone on this stage would do the right thing by Dreamers in the first 100 days. I would make it a top priority. I'm the son of immigrants myself. The fact is, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were started by an immigrant or children of immigrants. Immigrants make our country stronger and more dynamic. And immigrants are being scapegoated for issues they have absolutely nothing to do with. If you go to the factory in Michigan, it's not wall-to-wall immigrants, it's wall-to-wall robot arms and machines. We have to send the opposite message of this administration. And as your president, I think I could send a very clear message where if you're considering immigrating to this country and I'm the president, you would realize my son or daughter can become president of the United States. That's the opposite of the current administration, and that's the message I would love to send to the world.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Sanders, a related question to you. Actually, Senator Sanders, I have a new question for you. You can respond to Mr. Yang's comments as well.
Respond to the immigration question?
This is related, sir, but there are estimated to be as many as 12 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S., more than 2 million right here in California. If you have a chance to forge a bipartisan immigration reform plan, would you insist on a path to citizenship for all 12 million or just a segment of that population?
This is what I would do. Day one, executive order, restore the legal status of 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. Day one, we change border policy so that federal agents will never snatch babies from the arms of their mothers. Day one, we introduce bipartisan legislation, which will in fact be comprehensive, which will result in a path toward citizenship for all of the 11 million who are undocumented. That is what the people of our country want. Trump thinks mistakenly that he's going to win re-election by dividing us up. We are going to win this election by bringing our people together, Black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American. That's what this campaign is about. That's what America must be about.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. I started my day-to-day with a group of immigrants who were there talking to me about housing. And I thought about this president and what he's done. He has used our immigrants as political pawns. Every single day, he tries to draw a wedge. I will be a different president. My view on this comes from experience. When I got to the Senate, Senator Kennedy asked me to be one of the 2 new senators that was in the group to work on the immigration reform package. We got so close to passing that. I voted for it. Not everyone did, but most of the Democrats did. Then I was on the Judiciary Committee when President Obama was president, and we worked very hard on that immigration reform. We actually passed that with Republican votes. Then I was in the small group that worked on the compromise on the Dreamers that would have solved that problem. We didn't get that done because this president gut punched us.
Thank you,
I will
Senator.
take my views, I will take this experience, I will get this done because immigrants don't diminish America, they are America.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Steyer, briefly a response.
Listen, I think it's important to note that this president is not against immigration. He's against immigration by non-white people.
Yes.
This is his attempt to divide us, as Senator Sanders said, on race. And that's what he's been doing since the very first day he started running for president. He's been vilifying non-white people. He's been trying to inflame his base and scare them that if, in fact, white people lose control of this country, that they're going to lose control of their lives. And as somebody who lives in a majority-minority state, which is California, what he's doing is so wrong on so many different levels. I agree with Senator Sanders. We have to reframe this argument completely. We have to go back to the idea that every American is worth being a full human being on every right. This is a racial argument by a racist president who's trying to divide us and who's vilifying people. It's absolutely wrong, and it's led him to break the laws of humanity in our name.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Mayor Buttigieg, A new question to you, Mr. Mayor. You said last month that the U.S. owes compensation to children separated from their families at the southern border. The consensus among child welfare experts is that those thousands of children will likely suffer lifelong trauma as a result of that separation. Are you committing, as president, to financial compensation for those thousands of children?
Yes, and they should have a fast track to citizenship. Because what the United States did under this president to them was wrong. We have a moral obligation to make right what was broken. And on the larger issue of immigration, my understanding of this issue isn't theoretical. It's not something I formed in committee rooms in Washington. It begins with the fact that my household, my family, came from abroad. My father immigrated to this country and became a U.S. citizen. It comes from the fact that I'm the mayor of a city where neighborhoods that were left for dying are now coming back to life, largely because of the contributions, mainly of Latino immigrants. And I've seen those same neighborhoods shut down, families huddling in church, panicking just because of the rumor of an ICE raid. That did not make our country safer.
Could I
I had to
respond?
look into the eyes of an 8-year-old boy whose father was deported, even though he had nothing so much as a traffic ticket against his name, and try to think of something to tell that boy, because I couldn't tell him what he most wanted to hear, which is just that he was going to have his dad back. How can harming that young man possibly make America safer?
Mr. Mayor,
When I am president, based on those experiences, I will make sure that this is a country of laws and of values. And that means not only ending these unspeakable, cruel practices at the border, but finally and truly fixing the immigration system that has needed a full overhaul since the 1980s. We
Mr. Mayor.
cannot wait 4 years, 10 years. We cannot wait anymore to
Thank
do
you,
something
Mr. Mayor.
about this.
Just to follow up, since you do support compensation for those families, should the U.S. also compensate descendants of enslaved people? Do you support reparations for African Americans?
I support H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been proposed in Congress to establish a commission to look at reparations. But we shouldn't wait for that commission to do its work to do things that are reparative. Remember, we're not talking about a gift to anybody. We're talking about mending what was broken. We're talking about the generational theft of the wealth of generations of African Americans. And just crossing out a racist policy and replacing it with a neutral one is not enough to deliver equality. Harms compound, just like a dollar saved in its value compounds over time. So does the value of a dollar stolen. And that is why the United States must act immediately with investments in minority-owned businesses, with investments in health equity, with investments in HBCUs, and on the longer term, look at reparations so that we can mend what has been broken.
Vice President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, let me, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America, and we should invest in them. Everybody will benefit from it, every single American, and you should get used to it. This is a nation of immigrants. That's who we are. That's why we're who we are. That's what makes us different, and we should invest in it.
Thank you, Mr. Biden. Senator Klobuchar, you had your hand up.
Well, I was hearkening back. I made my case on immigration to what the mayor said about Washington. So I look at this a different way. When we were in the last debate, Mayor, you basically mocked the 100 years of experience on the stage. And what do I see on this stage? I see Elizabeth's work starting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and helping 29 million people. I see the vice president's work in getting $2 billion for his cancer moonshot. I see Senator Sanders' work of working to get the veterans bill passed across the aisle. And I see what I've done, which is to negotiate 3 farm bills and be someone that actually had major provisions put in those bills. So while you can dismiss committee hearings, I think this experience works. And I have not denigrated your experience as a local official. I have been one. I just think you should respect our experience when you look at how you evaluate someone who can get things done.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance to respond.
You actually did denigrate my experience, Senator, and it was before the break, and I was going to let it go because we got bigger fish to fry here. But you implied
I don't
that
think
my
we have bigger fish to fry than picking a president of the United States.
You're right. And before the break, you seemed to imply that my relationship to the First Amendment was a talking point, as if anyone up here has any more or less commitment to the Constitution than anybody else up here. Let me tell you about my relationship to the First Amendment. It is part of the Constitution that I raised my right hand and swore to defend with my life. That is my experience, and it may not be the same as yours, but it counts, Senator. It counts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Klobuchar, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I certainly respect your military experience. That's not what this is about. This is about choosing a president. And I know my view of this is I know you ran to be chair of the Democratic National Committee. That's not something that I wanted to do. I want to be president of the United States. And the point is we should have someone heading up this ticket that has actually won and been able to show that they can gather the support that you talk about of moderate Republicans and independents, as well as a fired up Democratic base. And not just done it once, I have done it 3 times. I think winning matters. I think a track record of getting things done matters. And I also think showing our party that we can actually bring people with us, have a wider tent, have a bigger coalition, and yes, longer coattails, that matters.
Thank you, Senator.
I got to respond to that. Senator, I know that if you just go by vote totals, maybe what goes on in my city seems small to you. If you want to talk about the capacity to win, try putting together a coalition to bring you back to office with 80% of the vote as a gay dude in Mike Pence's Indiana.
15 seconds.
Again, if you had won in Indiana, that would be one thing. You tried and you lost by 20 points.
But let's talk about how we win. Let's talk about how we win an election, which is something everybody here wants to do in terms of defeating the most dangerous president in American history. So let me tell you how you win it. You have the largest voter turnout in the history of America. And you don't have the largest voter turnout unless you create energy and excitement. And you don't create energy and excitement unless you are prepared to take on the people who own America and are prepared to speak to the people who are working in America. We need a progressive agenda. Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to a living wage, leading the world in combating climate change, making public colleges and universities available to all because we have free tuition, and canceling all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.